There is a moment in every sport when the greatest practitioner of a generation looks at what is coming next and gives their verdict. Not in the polite, diplomatic language of a press conference, not in the carefully managed words of a brand ambassador, but in the raw, unscripted physical language of a human being who genuinely cannot contain what they are feeling. September 14th, 2025, Tokyo, Japan, the World Athletics Championships 100-meter final. Usain Bolt, 8 Olympic gold medals, 9.58 seconds. The most dominant individual performer in the history of track and field is sitting in the stands. He watches Oblique Seville detonate from the blocks, build a lead through the first 30 meters, hold it through 60, and then pour everything he has into the final stretch. 9.77 seconds. World champion. Jamaica's first individual 100-meter world title since Bolt's own 2016 Olympic gold. And Bolt is on his feet, arms raised, cheering. The greatest sprinter who ever lived, standing up in the stands for another man's race. Because what he's watching is the answer to a question the sport has been asking since he retired in 2017. Most athletes spend their entire careers hoping Usain Bolt notices them. Oblique Seville made him stand up, cheer out loud, and then go on record calling the next generation dangerous, all in the same night. And what happened between those two men in the hours that followed is the most significant torch-passing moment in Jamaican sprinting since Bolt himself took the flame from Asafa Powell at the 2008 Beijing Olympics and never gave it back. Before a single block was set in Tokyo, before the 100-meter field had even been announced, Bolt had already delivered his verdict publicly. He told media in the weeks leading up to the World Championships that he believed Oblique Seville had what it took to win in Tokyo. Not Kishane Thompson, who had just run 9.75 seconds, the 6th fastest time in human history, at the Jamaican Championships 6 weeks earlier. Not Noah Lyles, the reigning Olympic champion and the most commercially visible sprinter on the planet. Seville, the man who had finished 4th at 2 consecutive World Championships and dead last at the Paris Olympics. The man the athletics media had spent 3 years categorizing as a nearly man, a talent without a championship finish, a sprinter whose time suggested greatness that his results had not yet confirmed. Bolt looked at that exact profile and publicly backed him to win the most important 100-meter race in the world. That is not a casual observation from a retired athlete looking for relevance. That is a calculated, deliberate endorsement from the man who has watched more elite sprint talent develop and perform under maximum pressure than any human being alive. When Bolt endorses a sprinter before a world championship final, the athletics world is obligated to listen. Because Bolt has been the standard against which every sprinter in the sport has been measured for nearly 2 decades, and he does not offer that kind of public backing lightly or without reason. The cameras at the World Athletics Championships in Tokyo do not only cover the track, they cover the stands. And on September 14th, 2025, in the moments after Oblique Seville crossed the finish line in 9.77 seconds, those cameras found Usain Bolt. What they captured is one of the defining images of the current era of sprinting. Not a composed, dignified former champion applauding from his seat, but a man physically on his feet, arms raised, the full weight of his body expressing what his face was already showing. Bolt was not there as a media personality or a sponsor's guest going through the motions of engagement. He was there as someone who understood, at a level nobody else in that stadium could fully match, exactly what had just happened on that track. He had watched Seville, a man he had publicly endorsed, a man whose trajectory he had studied and assessed and staked his public reputation on, go out into a world championship final against the 6th fastest man in history and the reigning Olympic champion, and produce a performance that answered every question the sport had been asking. The reaction was not manufactured. It was not performed for the camera. It was the involuntary physical response of a man watching something he had predicted, and finding it even more complete than he had imagined it would be. After the race, Oblique Seville stood in front of the cameras, still breathing hard, still processing the scale of what he had just done, and delivered 4 words that the sport has not stopped discussing since. We're the next generation. Not I, not me, we. The deliberate, conscious use of the plural. Positioning himself not as an individual champion ascending to replace a legend, but as the representative of something larger. A generation of Jamaican sprinters who had come through in Bolt's shadow, who had been compared to him, measured against him, found wanting against his standard, and who had now produced a world champion, a 9.75, a 9.77, and a 9.82 world lead in the space of 14 months. The word "we" was doing a specific kind of work in that sentence. It was acknowledging Bolt's legacy without being diminished by it. It was claiming succession without claiming equivalence. It was the statement of a man who had just won the world title and understood exactly what that title meant in the context of the island he came from, and the man whose shoes the sport had been waiting for someone to fill. Bolt heard it, the sport heard it, and in an era where athletes are coached to say nothing controversial, nothing that can be clipped and used against them, Seville stood in front of the cameras with a gold medal around his neck and told the world directly where Jamaican sprinting was going. Nobody pushed back, because nobody could. What makes Bolt's endorsement of Seville significant beyond the optics and the emotion of the Tokyo night is the body of work that endorsement was built on. Because the record Seville is destroying did not begin in September 2025. They have been accumulating across a career that the sport's mainstream narrative consistently undervalued until it could no longer afford to. His 9.77 seconds in Tokyo is the third fastest time ever run at a World Athletics Championships, equaling a mark set by Bolt himself in 2013. His 9.82 at the 2026 Jamaican Championships, running into a 0.6 meter per second headwind, which under neutral wind conditions would project closer to 9.79 or 9.80, is the 2026 world lead. He ran it and told reporters he felt he could have gone faster. That statement from the world champion running the fastest time on the planet in 2026 is the detail that reveals everything about where Oblique Seville is in his development. He is not managing a peak. He is still climbing toward one. At 25 years old, with a personal best of 9.77 and a trajectory that continues to trend downward, the question is not whether Seville belongs among the all-time greats. The question is how far the climb goes, and whether anyone on the planet has the tools to interrupt it before it reaches its natural ceiling. To understand why Bolt's recognition of Seville carries the specific weight that it does, you need to understand what Bolt was actually looking at when he watched Seville's career unfold. Not the 9.77, not the Tokyo gold, the path that led there. Fourth at the World Championships in 2022. Fourth at the World Championships in 2023. Dead last in the 100-meter final at the Paris 2024 Olympics. 3 consecutive championship appearances producing results that looked, to the outside world, like a pattern of failure under pressure. A sprinter who could run fast in qualifiers and heats, but could not deliver when the moment was biggest. That was the narrative. That was what the athletics media had built around Oblique Seville's name by the time Tokyo arrived. And Bolt, who had watched this exact pattern before, who had lived through his own years of junior near misses and high expectations and results that did not yet match the potential the coaches and insiders could see, looked at that narrative and dismissed it entirely. He backed Seville anyway, because Bolt recognized something in the trajectory that the narrative was missing. The near misses were not evidence of a ceiling. They were evidence of an athlete accumulating the specific, irreplaceable experience of competing at the highest level under maximum pressure, building the competitive architecture that championship performances are constructed from. Bolt had been through it. He knew what it produced on the other side. And on September 14th, 2025, standing in the stands in Tokyo, he watched it produce exactly what he had predicted. Here's the verdict on Oblique Seville and what the Bolt connection actually means, stated as plainly as the facts allow. Bolt endorsed him publicly before Tokyo. Bolt stood up and cheered in the stands during the race. Seville told the world they were the next generation directly afterward. That sequence, endorsement, witness, succession, is not a coincidence of timing or a product of emotion in the moment. It is the most deliberately constructed passing of the torch in Jamaican sprinting history. And it was constructed not by a marketing team or a broadcaster looking for a storyline, but by the performances themselves. A 9.77 World Championship gold. A 9.82 world lead with a headwind. Feeling he left something behind. A 25-year-old who has been through the furnace of fourth-place finishes and last-place finishes and emerged from it as the fastest man on the planet in 2026. The man holding that torch right now is running into headwinds and saying he can go faster. Budapest is still ahead. And Usain Bolt, the only man in history who truly understands what it looks like when a Jamaican sprinter is still climbing toward their ceiling, has already told us what he thinks is coming. The sport would do well to listen.